Dr. Carmen, thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's my honor. I love so much what you're doing as a mother of a daughter who has gone through puberty. Let's talk about what you do because it's such important work.
Yes, well, I'll give you a little bit of background, a little bit of context. So, my professional background is in psychology. So, I have a doctorate degree in psychology. I'm a tenured professor, and I'm very, very clear that I was put on the planet to help empower girls and women. And probably about 10 years ago, I started teaching the psychology of women. And really delving into this whole developmental milestone of menarche, which is the technical term for a girl's first period, and just really, really looking at how that is addressed cross-culturally, like around the world. And I started seeing that there were people who actually celebrated it. And I was like, that was a new concept for me. And I started thinking, whoa, this is fantastic. So I really started delving more, into it and seeing like, yes, the menstruation process, the menstruation cycle is necessary for the human species to continue. So, yes, it deserves respect. Yes, it deserves reverence. Yes, it deserves to be understood. So, that's sort of how things sort of got crackling, got started for me. And then fast forward, like maybe 2 years or so ago, I decided to start working with preteens and teens. And I developed a workshop called Power to the Period. And that was specifically because I recognized that there were so many young people who had no clue about the menstrual cycle. Like they knew nothing about it, nothing about basic anatomy. And my stance now is that the menstrual cycle is very, very sacred. So I wanted to teach them how to use it as a guide for self-care. So that workshop was fantastic. The moms join us at the end. There's a beautiful sort of rite of passage piece at the end. And from that, I realized, oh my gosh, there are grown women who still have residue and lots of room for healing around their own menstrual cycles. So I said, okay, we're going to do something for, these amazing women. And so I developed a workshop called Rock with Your Menstrual Rhythm, to teach them about the sacredness of it, right? That little mindset shift, so that again, they could begin to use their menstrual cycle as a guide for self-care. From there, it occurred to me that there are so many dads out there who want to know how to support their daughters. Like these are devoted dads, they're dedicated dads, they're at the soccer games, they're at back to school night, they are doing the tea parties, they're really, really doing it. But because of this negative stigma, right, around the menstrual cycle, and many, many people who menstruate have been socialized to keep it a secret, right? We don't talk about it, especially with people who don't menstruate, right? Because we're embarrassed, right? So we try to hide everything. But because of that, people who don't menstruate have no clue what's going on. And so they're growing up clueless, they're oblivious, they're in the dark. And sometimes when we don't know about things, it's easy to talk negatively about it, or it's easy to make assumptions, or all of that stuff. And so there are so many dads who really want to be a part of the process, but to no fault of their own, just did not know how. They didn't know what to say. First of all, they're just shocked that their daughter, is now wearing a bra, or, that she started her period, just wasn't on his radar. And so they are clamoring for help in how to have these communications with their daughters. So that is how I got here.
That is all so juicy and powerful. So many things I want to go back and break down. But first of all, I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing because, like I said, I have a daughter. And that conversation was so important with her. And when she was that age and we, were anticipating her to start her period and all of those things, my mom was sick. And so I spent a lot of time traveling back and forth 400 miles away. And I was so afraid that I wouldn't be here when that happened. And so we had a lot of preemptive conversation. My husband and I had a lot of preemptive conversation. You know, I took her to the store to pick out what she would need. And that way she would know, A, she would have what she needed, and B, she would know how to ask my husband for what it was that she needed. And so the three of us sat and had a conversation. And as I'm saying that, I am very aware of the fact that that's not necessarily the norm.
It is not. It is not the norm. So I'm in the process of, unfortunately, yet we're going to try to make it the norm.
Yes, I love that.
But I'm in the process of completing a period stories project where I'm interviewing people of all genders, ethnicities, backgrounds, sexual orientations, right? Because we all have a period story, some whether it's direct or indirect.
Yes.
And there are so many grown women in their 30s, 40s, 50s on up. There are people in their 70s who are participating. And they say to me that when they started their period, they knew nothing. So that means that you're 11 or whatever age, and you go to the bathroom and you see blood in the crotch of your underwear, you're freaked out. Like they really thought they were dying. I mean, literally, because no one had the foresight like you have in your family to educate them about what's coming and that this is a natural process. And, none of that occurred. And so it just breaks my heart, to hear those stories. So, from what you described as a part of your family, I would love for that to be the norm. And so I'm trying to do my part to make that the norm, because the reality is that there are many women, like I said, who knew nothing. And so that means that their moms or mother figure taught them nothing. And so
Right.
we cannot assume that because there's a mom or an auntie or a grandmother around, we cannot assume that that young person is going to get the education that she needs because of, that mom or auntie or grandmother, because of their issues with it. I mean, this is so deep, Pascal. This is so deep.
It's so deep.
Um,
When I started my period, I was 12, probably TMI for a lot of people, and that's okay. I didn't even really know what to say to my mom, right? Because it just wasn't really talked about. And so I knew, that didn't feel right, that I didn't know what to say. And I'm going to be very honest and say, I was watching The Cosby Show as an older teenager or a little bit older teenager, and Claire Huxtable had Woman's Day with her daughters. And I thought that was the most amazing thing I had ever heard. And I was like, I want to be more like that. If I have a daughter, I want to celebrate that with her. And I want her to be comfortable. Now, all props to my mom. She was an amazing mother. And I'm not calling her out for anything because, like you said, we're all a product of our parents and our grandparents, and it goes so far back, right? We all do the best we can do with what we know and from with what we've learned. I learned a lot from Claire Huxtable. I'm just going to leave it there.
well, thank you to the Cosby Show, because you are not the only person, I'm sure, that got educated about the positivity of it via that show, right? The other thing that I wanted to sort of go back to is, how you said when you started your period, you weren't quite sure how to talk to your mom about it. Well, there are two people who I have interviewed in the Period Stories Project where they hid it from their mom for 2 years because they thought they would be in trouble.
Oh,
Right? Let that sink. They thought that they would be in trouble because, so they had older sisters, and the communication in the household from their mom to the older sisters was, don't be out there, with the boys, you can get pregnant, keep your legs closed. Like it was all negative. It was all
yeah.
a bad thing. So
Yeah.
when these two people started their period, they were like, oh no, I'm going to be in trouble. Bless their 11-year-old hearts, their 12-year-old hearts and minds. So they hid it from the entire family for 2 years so that they wouldn't be in trouble.
That's heartbreaking.
Yes. Yes, it is. Absolutely.
So I love so much that part of what you talk about when you're talking with dads of these preteens and teenagers is learning to honor the divine feminine. And as an energy worker, that really resonated with me because, the divine feminine, I just want to start by saying every one of us is at our best a balance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. We carry both energies. It's not necessarily about gender, right? Energetically, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I would love to. And thank you so much for your work. So it's really interesting because there was a time way, 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 way back when, like thousands of years ago, in society where women were actually revered, where women were the mediators for conflict, because they had a way of being able to carry both sides and respectfully mediate without fighting. And so there was a time when women's ways of knowing was put on a pedestal. And the feminine way of knowing is like very spiritual. It's hard to put words to it. It's hard to put words to the intuition. Like, I just know.
Yes.
And unfortunately, there became a time as we progressed that, I'm just going to say it, with patriarchy, that way of knowing became questioned and labeled as a witch, and all these other negative things, right? So we know all about the witch hunts and all of that stuff. And so the feminine way of knowing became denigrated. You're seen as something wrong. And so what that did was it then caused, in my estimation, a disconnect in a mind body disconnect in women, a mind spirit body disconnect, because they started then not trusting their ways of knowing, right? So, okay, it's so heavy when I talk about it.
Yeah, I understand because it is so heavy because it's almost not almost, it's narcissistic, right? Because you know that you have this divine feminine knowing that you can't necessarily describe, but like you said, you just know. And now the patriarchy swoops in and says, we want the power. And so we're going to tell you, no, you don't really have that. You're crazy. You just think you do, or you're evil and there's something wrong with you, or you're just dirty and we don't accept you. And so now you start thinking, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am evil. Maybe I am not worthy. Maybe I am all the things, even though deep down, you're just a divine feminine being.
Yes, absolutely. And I just really want for people who menstruate to understand that their cycle can actually be used as a guide for self-care. So I'll explain how. Now, this works, primarily for folks who have regular cycles. Certainly there are folks who have things like PCOS and endometriosis, and right, who, can definitely have physiological, challenges with their cycles. But for those folks who have more what I call a regular cycle, I put regular in quotes because everybody has a different norm, right?
I call those the lucky people.
But so if you're able to experience all four phases of the cycle, and I'll just kind of walk through that a little bit, because it'll give us a picture, a little glimpse of how we can use the cycle as a guide for self-care, because we have a built-in clock, a built-in system that tells us how to take care of ourselves. So here's how it goes. I like to equate the phases of the menstrual cycle with what I call the inner seasons. So we are familiar with the seasons of the weather, right? We know spring, summer, winter, fall. We know what to expect. We know there's a pattern. We know how to dress in summer. We know how to dress in winter, right? There's no question marks, for the most part. We just know what to expect, and we get in the rhythm of the seasons. Well, the menstrual cycle can be seen as that way as well. So I'll start with winter, okay? So the inner season of winter is equated with the actual menstruating phase, the phase when you're on your period. And I really like to go through these phases because a lot of people, regardless of gender or whatever, think that either they're on their period or they're not, and that's it. Well, there's a lot of other things happening. So in the winter phase, in the menstruation phase of the menstrual cycle, this is a time to rest for the most part. This is the time to keep your calendar clear. This is a time to engage in some reflection. This is a time to really, really pay attention to your body. A lot of people will have interesting dreams during this particular phase. This is the time to jot those down. So it's really a time to go inward, right? So that is winter. So we all know what happens after winter: spring. And so, yay, right. And so spring is a time of new beginnings, right? You're coming out of your winter. It's a new bloom. So you may have more things on your calendar, right? This is a time to really, really engage in like your creativity, starting new things, new ideas. This is the time just for new beginnings, like you're coming out of your 5-day hibernation, right? As much as you can. So that is spring, a time of new beginnings. Next after that is summer, right? And we all love summer. The days are long. We got our shorts on. We're showing more skin.
I
And
love
so,
this whole thing. I know I'm interrupting, but this whole thing, because as you're saying it, it's just such a great visual and an understanding. So, okay, back to summer. I just
yes,
needed to
back
say
to
how much
summer.
I'm really vibing with this.
Okay, yes. And so summer is equated to ovulation. Okay, so for folks who are wanting to conceive, this is the time to get busy. But it's not just about conceiving a child, but it's also about manifesting new things, right? So those things that, maybe some seeds that you planted in spring or whatnot, summer is the time of manifestation. So what are those things that you really have been wanting to happen? What are those new business ideas or new ways of doing things or the new job that you want to apply for? Summer is the time of manifestation, ovulation, creativity, right? So that's what's happening in summer. So then finally, there's one more phase, and that is the last one. So we're in fall or autumn. Some people, this is referred to as the follicular phase. And I'm going to hang out here a little bit because fall is often equated to this time of PMS. PMS, or premenstrual syndrome, definitely has a negative connotation out there, right? If I can purposely use a profanity word, this is a time where the stereotype is that she's bitchy, she's ornery, da, 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 you don't want to be around her, all of that stuff. Well, I really want to encourage everyone to reframe that acronym of PMS, of premenstrual syndrome. And I like to refer to it as premenstrual self-care. Because what happens is, this is the time that we're beginning to slow down in terms of our calendars. This is the time where it's important to purge toxic people, places, and things. This is the time, yes, this is the time to declutter. This is the time to get really real with ourselves, be really authentic with ourselves about what's not working for us, who's not working for us. Because when we're in this particular phase of the cycle, unfortunately, many women have been socialized to not rock the boat, right? To not share when a boundary has been crossed, to not say anything to avoid conflict. Well, during fall, we're like, I've had it. I can't take it anymore. I've been biting my tongue for too long and I am way up here. I can't do it anymore. So that's why during fall, it is so important to reflect on what's not working. So our own behaviors that are not working, what we have allowed from other people that's not working, it is time for us to acknowledge those things. And during all the other phases of the cycle, it's really important for us to be assertive and share. It can come from love when someone has crossed a boundary. Hey, you may not have been aware of how this landed on me, but I need you to know, right? And so that type of communication is upping the game of feminine, of the divine feminine.
Yes.
During fall is also the time, because when we think of fall, we think of harvest, right? We're harvesting all the good stuff. And that's also a time to reflect on the good, to reflect on your accomplishments over from the other previous phases of the cycle, big and small. Like, yes, I let someone know when they stepped on my toes and it came from a place of love and we were able to have this, wonderful conversation. Or yes, I got a raise, or yes, I took more time for self-care, or whatever it is, being able to really, really celebrate and acknowledge all of our accomplishments. So if we can think about it, Pascal, this system is within us, so that every month or 28 days or however long your normal is, there's a guide showing you when to reflect, when to be still, when to curl up with a good book, when to drink your hot cocoa, and have your tea, when to meditate more, when to be busier, when to start those new projects, and then when to really, really, count our blessings and reflect and think about the things that we need to get rid of that no longer serve us. This is how the menstrual cycle is a guide for self-care.
Mm, you just said so much amazing, fabulous stuff. Again, every time you start, I just like lean in on my hands and, oh, I'm just taking it all in because you're just such a force, my friend. Oh, Dr. Carmen, I love the reframe of PMS to PMSC, premenstrual self care. That changes everything, right? It's in that time. Yep. Maybe I've been called bitchy. Maybe I've been called moody. I know I could fly off the handle in that time, all the things. At the same time, reflecting on why it's happening and how I can help soothe it. And it's that self care that makes all the difference. I love this idea of the decluttering, right? What have I been putting up with? What haven't I seen enough of? The reflection, taking it all in. This decluttering idea, I'm thinking, is perfect because now you're going back into the winter, which is actually your period where you don't go out, where you rest, and where you just be. So the decluttering is important because you're preparing your space. So you're preparing the space in your life, energetically, socially, in your physical space, all of it for the winter phase, the winter period, right? And oh, it's just beautiful. What a different way. And it changes the energy of all of it.
Yes, and when we can, because it's my belief that it's our responsibility to teach people how to interact with us.
Yes.
And so when we understand those four phases and we can communicate them to our loved ones,
Yeah.
right? it just improves the family dynamics, whether it's a romantic relationship, marriage, whether it's father-daughter, what have you, whether it's brother-sister. When everybody understands the phases of the cycle, then we can give reference to each phase. Each phase is important. Like, oh, okay, she's in fall. She needs some time to, write in her journal or, listen to her music with her headphones on or whatever it is. Oh, she's in winter. And if I've been paying attention to what she needs in winter, maybe I'll go rub her feet because I know she likes that. Or maybe I'll rub her back, or maybe I'll grab her hot water bottle, or, maybe I'll spray some lavender around, or whatever she likes that helps to take care of her during that phase. And then, summer and, or spring and summer are coming after that. So it just benefits everyone when everyone understands the phases of the cycle.
Mm, so true. I tell clients that you create boundaries for you. Your boundaries are not for other people. Your boundaries are for you. And so having the seasons that you're just talking about, what you're doing is you are creating those boundaries for yourself. And that's only kindness to other people because you are showing them your expectation for how you want to be treated and what you need during those times. And I feel like there's nothing more kind than you can do for someone than to show them how to treat you, what you need, how to show up, because no one else is a mind reader. Well, I can't say no one, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like our loved ones aren't mind readers. And if we don't communicate, and you, Dr. Carmen, starting the conversation of the importance of this communication and how to communicate using these tools of the 4 seasons, it's beautiful. And it's what we need to come home to because this feels like coming home to femininity.
Yes. I was speaking with a man not long ago and I was explaining the 4 phases. And he said, oh, that's why she may not want me to, that's why it feels like she might be pushing me away a little bit because she needs her alone time. She needs her me time. Well, initially, before he understood, he was taking it personally. Like, what's going on? What's up with her? But now that he understands the 4 phases of the cycle, he understands the pattern. He's like, oh, yeah, what do you need? You need the bathroom for an hour? Like, yes, do you need the house for a day? So, and he feels more in tune with her, which is what he wanted because he felt disconnected before. But when he's more in tune with her, I mean, their love, it just, it's incredible.
And that's exactly it, right? They're more in tune, so they're more connected. Their love is able to flow more easily without all of the detours and, bumps in the road. And I feel like with every generation, fathers are becoming more and more involved and they want these relationships. Nothing is finite. Not every dad is comfortable with this kind of stuff, but the more we're making the conversation normal, the more comfortable the dads are going to be. And the reality is that without the period, the dad wouldn't be here. The daughter wouldn't be here, right? So it's this beautiful blessing. And it is something that we should hold in reverence, not something that is dirty or to be ashamed of. Or, culturally, there are many cultures who it's still dirty. A woman is unclean if she's on her period. For me, I think she's more clean than ever because she's cleansing, she's
Right.
releasing, right? So for me, that feels like the most clean time.
Yes, absolutely. And, I think it was the late basketball player, Kobe Bryant,
Mm.
who is credited with the term girl dad.
Oh,
So he was doing an interview and he talked about how much he loved, his daughter, and how he would have more girls if he could, and how he just loved the connection. And so he kind of coined this term girl dad. Well, since then, and especially since his passing, there's just been a lot more awareness for dads who are fathering daughters, right? And
Yes.
so, the reality is that, when your daughter starts her period, mom may not be around, you know? And so, dad, it's on you. And I just want dads to picture, because sometimes dads will say that's the mom's job, go talk to your mom. You can't say, let's wait for your mom to get home. How is that going to land on your daughter? I just want dads to think about that. It's going to land on her in a way that says, daddy can't take care of me.
Yeah.
Daddy doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have my back. I can't
He
rely
doesn't
on
care
him.
enough.
Exactly. All of those, and probably more things. And so the reality is that dads are so important in terms of planting seeds of body positivity early, in terms of their daughters' self-esteem, self-worth, all the stuff that we've been talking about. And so when they are able to lean into that, and even I tell dads, have role plays about what she's going to be facing during her adolescence journey. They're going to be more, mature situations that she's going to be in. There's going to be propositions for things. There might be propositions for drugs, alcohol, sex, other risky behavior, right? And so it's important that girls are able to receive from the male perspective of their dad, what I call the special dad mojo. It is so important that they get that early on. And so when they are in those situations, because it's not if, it's when
When?
they're in those situations, they will be able to draw upon the conversations that they had with dad. They'll be at the forefront. And, ideally, they make healthy decisions when they're in, those situations. And they feel comfortable going to dad afterward and talking about it and using him as a counsel, seeking his counsel for these more mature situations. And when they're further on, in their adulthood, they will use him as the model for who to lean into, for who to have around them, because he was conscious enough to initiate what I call these connecting conversations. It's so powerful, Pascal.
It is so powerful. Building your daughter's self-esteem, being there for her, keeping that line of communication open so she's comfortable to talk to you. And, I also have two sons. And so I want to circle back to that. It's also so important, not only in giving the dad the tools, but giving the brothers the tools, right? Giving your boys the tools. How are you going to treat the girl at school who didn't expect to start her period and now she has to go to the nurse's office and go home to change her clothes, right? Are you going to make fun of her, or are you going to loan her your jacket to put around her waist so she feels safe? And we need to be raising our sons to be comfortable with that, to be accepting of that, to be nurturing, and to call on their own divine feminine in moments like that, to make that a safe space for these girls and young women.
You are so right. I have a 16-year-old son, and have started teaching him about, the phases, and how there is, there's period shaming out there, there's teasing out there, especially that happens at schools. And I have let him know that it is my expectation that should something like that occur and he's present, that he steps in as a leader, as
Yes.
a model, right? And says, hey, that's not okay. Hey, let's walk on over, to the nurse's office together. It is so important, so much so that I think that's probably the next workshop that I will develop for
Absolutely.
boys, for the
Yes.
teens, right? Because it is just so important that they learn it early on. Everybody needs to know.
Yeah. And everybody is not going to be comfortable having the conversation, whether or not you are open to the conversation, right? When my kids were in elementary school, the preteens, the school nurse held a tea for mothers and daughters. And you bring your own teacup, and then you're educated and you have this conversation and you leave with goodies and, all the things. My daughter was like, nope, not going there, not doing that. Just we didn't have conversations, but she had no interest in participating. Doesn't mean it wasn't available to her. And that's the goal, is to make it make the tools accessible. And that's what you're doing. And that is so powerful.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up, because I actually, in the Dad's Puberty Playbook Masterclass, I had a dad ask me, what if my daughter doesn't want to talk to me? What if she's only comfortable talking to mom? Or what if she just doesn't, want to deal with it, which is a very, very, valid question. And, my response to that is, then share your story, share your adolescence journey, share your period story, because it's so important for our young people to know that we were 11 once. It's hard for them to conceive that, that we are human, and our young people want to know that we are human, right? And so
Absolutely.
when we're able to, share, the predicaments that we were in, or how we learned certain things, or how we didn't learn certain things, or how we wish that someone taught us these things, or how we were, caught between a rock and a hard place, and how did we make these decisions? Those are all teachable moments. And young people, whether they are frowning on their face or not, they want to hear it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Whether they admit it or not, they want to hear it. So that's actually one of the keys that I, encourage dads to do. Share your period story,
Yeah.
share your puberty story, share your adolescence journey. There's so much to learn for young people in our own stories.
So powerful. I want to circle back to the divine feminine a little bit. And, characteristics, like we said, every person has divine feminine and divine masculine energy. The goal is to balance those, right? Do we live in balance all the time? We do not, but it's the goal. Um, Characteristics of the divine masculine are go, 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 do, um, work through it, keep going, all the things, go, fight, win. Characteristics of the divine feminine are nurturing, allowing, um, just being, holding space, right? All of those allowing, nurturing feelings, those are the divine feminine. And so while it's important to go, 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 do, that helps keep us moving forward. I love bringing that divine feminine energy back into your reflection of the four seasons. Go, 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 do when you're waking up in the spring, when you're planting the seeds, when you're when you're manifesting in the summer, when you're more active, when you're all the things. And then the other two seasons bring in more of the divine feminine. And so even in that, there's a balance.
I love this. This is the first time that I've seen it layered that way. And I love the layer of that. It just fits so perfectly in the cycle.
It's so perfect. And what I do is I teach women to turn their life lessons, their life's PhD into a profitable business. And so I like to ask people, how do you feel like what you do, your energetic beliefs, your connection with the divine, the cosmos, all of those things, how has that impacted your business and how you run your business, how you connect to other people?
This is so good. So first off, I'm like you said, I'm very, very clear that this work is divine
Yes.
on so many levels. It is spiritual work.
Yes.
On so many levels, it is sacred work. And so, yes, all of that. And, not everyone is tied into their own sacredness. You know, not everyone is tied into their own divine masculine, their own, you know, divine feminine. So that means I need to be very conscious about languaging and how I communicate with people, particularly when it comes to working with dads. Now, this is a generalization, right? Not everyone is going to fit into this category. But for a lot of times, dads don't have the practice of self-reflection. They don't have the practice of, you know, taking time to, you know, to rejuvenate. They don't have the practice of that inner introspection. Where a lot of times, again, just a generalization, women tend to have more practice with that. And so the work that I am recommending that dads engage in requires them to begin to be introspective, to be self-reflective, because I'm talking about, this is a relationship issue, right? A father-daughter, you know, relationship issue. And whenever we are wanting to improve in a relationship, we have to start with self. We have to engage in that self-reflection. And it also requires vulnerability.
Yes.
And this is an area that freaks a lot of people out, freaks a lot of dads out in terms of being vulnerable. But I am very clear that our victory is in the vulnerability. That's where it lies. So we have to
Yes.
go to the vulnerability in order to emerge, you know, victorious. So one of my challenges, frankly, is being able to connect with those dads who either resonate with that or are open-minded enough to give it a shot for the benefit of their daughters.
Mm, absolutely. And that is the important piece right there, for the benefit of their daughters and for the benefit of that relationship that you talked about, right? And not only that, but it's also for the benefit of the mother. Whether the parents are still together or not, as a mother, you want to trust the dad's got this. He can handle this, right? And I felt very safe if I were away. I knew my husband could handle it, you know, and we had the conversations and I felt secure in that. I would have been devastated if I wasn't there, right? As a mother, as Claire Huxtable, I would want to be there. I would want to, you know, but knowing that my husband had her, that is peace of mind like I can't even explain.
So true. It's so true.
Yeah.
And so the work, like I said, it just benefits everyone. Like everyone benefits from this.
Yeah. Yeah. So amazing. So I have to ask, if you're comfortable sharing, what's your period story?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes. I love this. So, um, I believe I was in sixth grade, and we had our sex ed class, you know, at school where they separate the genders.
Yeah.
And, you know, my mom, before I started, had gotten me a little kit with uh, now what we call period care products. Back then, it was like your sanitary napkins. The word sanitary just does a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
So we now call it period care product. But so I had my little kit, you know, at the ready. And I remember my best friend, she had her kit at the ready, you know. And so I was at home when I started. So I had some, you know, education beforehand, so I knew what it was. Called my mom into the bathroom and she gave me the spiel on how to change out my, you know, period care products. I was using a disposable pad. And so I was excited initially. I was excited, like, ooh, I got it. It's here. You know, I get to open my kit. So I was initially excited. And then my mom, after she, you know, gave me my lesson, she called her mother to, you know, let her know that I had started. And distinctly remember, and again, my 11-year-old mind, my 11-year-old perception, but it felt like my mother was whispering to her mother.
Mm,
It felt like it was supposed to be something in secret, right? So it had a different energy around it. And in my 11-year-old mind, I thought, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to be excited about this because how I have observed my mother speaking with her mother. And so that changed, frankly, my experience of, my period story. I thought, oh, people aren't supposed to know. Like, you aren't supposed to tell people, about this. And then there lies the secrecy and all the anxiety to keep it a secret from
yes.
like everybody, being in the bathroom stall and you need to open your period care products and you don't want the person in the next stall to hear the crumpling of the paper. It's
Right.
like so much fear and so much anxiety around it. So that, was my period story in terms of what happened when I first started.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And, I think it's fantastic that you'll share your vulnerability because when you are vulnerable, you are giving other people permission to be vulnerable as well. And so sharing your vulnerability and allowing it, modeling it for other people is your superpower. And
Mm.
so oh, Dr. Carmen, I could talk to you all day. Now I'm like, oh, I want to talk to you about the womb and I want to talk. No, we will not go squirrel here. So I'm wondering if there's anything that you would like to share with listeners.
Oh, yes. Well, I would love if there are dads who, are out there who, or folks listening who have, devoted dads, compassionate dads, in your network. Please do share with them. I would love to, work with them. I have a wonderful coaching program called the Fatherhood Game Changing Program. It's a 4-month program, and I am offering a $200 discount on that. And, let's just do this because I'm really wanting, my big vision, Pascal, is to create not just a national community, but a global community of dads who see this way of fathering as the norm, who
Yes.
see this as excellent fatherhood. So if there's anyone who wants to learn more about that, please, you can get in contact with me and have what I call a game planning call. Let's figure out, how we're going to do it. It's free. It's 30 minutes via Zoom, and you can do that at bit.ly/game planning call, bit.ly/game planning call. Sign up. Again, it's free, doesn't hurt anything. 30 minutes to figure out how you're going to learn the knowledge and how you're going to learn the skill to either support self, support your child, support your romantic partner. We can do all of that in 30 minutes.
Mm, I love it. And not only are you, you know, fostering that safety security in your daughter, you're being an example for your sons. And if we want to truly lift women up and empower women, we need the men to help.
Yes, they're critical. They're a
Critical.
critical part of the equation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Carmen, I'm going to put a link in show notes so people can get a hold of you and sign up for your call, get into your program with the discount because they're listeners. I appreciate that. Thank you. And, I would love for you to come back anytime. You're amazing. You're changing the world. Like I like to say, one conversation at a time.
Thank you so much, Pascal, for having me. It's been a pleasure.